things. Again, I was part of this National Youth Task Force, or National Task Force on Youth Employment, which is largely a interministerial sort of setup, where as a young person, what I saw was the fact that there being so many ministries on different line items, that the ministries themselves did not know what the other ministries were doing. So there were about 15 ministries working on the issue of youth employment. So the Ministry of Labour won't know what the Ministry of Fisheries has to do with young people and, say, fisherfolk, young people working on them. And they were unaware that there was a program that was already being implemented, right, whereas they were already thinking about a program.
So what did you exactly do with regards to that?
So one of the things that, so again, this is part of a larger problem for young people, you know, in terms of governance issues, the way politics is conducted in this country. But you
can't keep saying that it's part of a large issue, yes, and not. What is your tether? What is your anchor to actually addressing these problems from your perspective?
Yeah. So the task force is a space. I was the only young person on this thing. So I get to sit with all the secretaries, and what kind of a voice can I really make?
So was it tokenistic?
So yeah, it was again very tokenistic. I just went for 3 or 4 meetings, and after that I got disillusioned with it. So and to see whether actually young people should be actually consulted in a space where they get to sit their peers and not with secretaries. I think there is a benefit of these sort of, you know, young people getting to be part of the mainstream process as well, getting representation there. But there a stronger voice might not emerge in a sea of, you know, bureaucracy and all of that. Whereas a better strategy might be also to work with young people on their own platforms, you know, young people sitting with their peers and working with them. So we need to experiment with young people being infused within the mainstream, as well as working with young people in their own platform.
Now you travel, your hometown is Jaffna, if I'm not mistaken. Now you've continued to travel back into Jaffna and spend time there, and over the past few years, does it give you better perspective, do you feel, to be acutely reminded of the realities outside of Colombo by frequent travel to your hometown, and how has it impacted your work?
I won't get into a sort of a gradation of experiences and say that, you know, an experience in Jaffna matters much more than an experience in Colombo. I think having been in Colombo gives a side of an experience as well. But yes, in terms of having a much more understanding version of things as they happen, it does make a difference that I come from Jaffna, so on and so forth. But still, there might be not certain parts of me open to certain things because I don't have the experience of, say, having been from the south. So I look at experiences as something that should be converged in terms of understanding better experience. Then I won't really, you know, get into grading experience by. But it does, you know, the diverse the experience are, the more open you are to.
You're also, just on that point though, you're also a student, a university student, and I wonder whether that kind of dialogue occurs in campuses.
Well, it doesn't.
And why not? And why haven't you done anything to engender it?
No, yeah. So we've tried through our debating society at the University of Colombo to do certain things, but there are entrenched sort of political structures within the university systems which are dangerous to confront from a very individual sort of youth activist point of view. It's very difficult to rally around. And again, I would also say that the way our university is structured, our education system within university is structured, does not allow a young person, you know, you want to finish your exams. It's ironical though, isn't it? Yeah, you want to finish your exams, you want to get your stuff done and move on. And you might not want to get into stuff that might get into trouble. So the way university system works. But look at academic activism within universities. How many academics? There are a lot of academics who do work through say organizations that they are affiliated outside of university. But in terms of the university academic community being assertive about stuff, have you ever heard in the past where the university academic community has stood up for something? It has rarely occurred, if it has occurred at all. And
is that an excuse then for the youth to just?
It's not. It just tells us. What sort of a system we are in, where even academics who have probably a much more recognized standing are not able to voice themselves.
I'm going to ask you this question in a different way. I mean, part of the work that Beyond Borders and members of the Sri Lankan Youth Parliament have been involved in has been leveraging the growth of new media in Sri Lanka, blogs, blogging, the web and the internet. Now, you might be a blogger yourself. Do you really feel that this has traction as we move forward into the future to generate awareness and youth from even places outside of Colombo and the Western Province to engage in the dialogues that you're suggesting?
Well, I do blog very infrequently though, but yes, I think it's a tool that can be utilized, but the reach of the tool is for debate. That will depend on internet access, broadband access, so on and so forth. And for the moment, the community, sort of the blogging community or the new media community, is very small and largely restrictive to Colombo. So outside of Colombo, physical spaces do matter. Meeting one-on-one, talking to young people one-on-one does matter, and even the conversation. And I'm still to see a lot of youth activism within the new media community in Sri Lanka. Then I don't know how many young people really.
What to you is youth activism?
To me, youth activism is about young people taking care of, taking note of things that happen in the society and wanting to make a contribution. See, But
I would argue that if you take a look at the blogosphere, that there are young people taking note, who are concerned, who are angry, and who are writing about it. Now, is that youth activism for you, or is it also the actioning of that word?
No, that's one form of youth activism. Sure. Getting your voices heard, trying to put down on the new media as to what you think is definitely one way of activism. But that probably is one form of activism
that needs to be complemented by
which needs to be complemented much more with real on the ground action as well.
And that's part of what you're doing as well. With
right.
I mean, we talked about the discussion groups that you're facilitating with Beyond Borders as well. Could you tell us a bit?
Yeah, so the idea with Beyond Borders is that we are hoping to set up study circles around the country, looking at creating
not just in English, yeah.
Not just in English. Right. So the Colombo one does operate in English, but outside we are in the language that they are comfortable in. Creating spaces for young people to keep the dialogue going, especially on ethnic conflict and governance-related
dialogue
issues.
For dialogue's sake, or dialogue that
yes, it is actually dialogue for dialogue's sake. A lot of people do say that we have enough talk shops. We don't think we have enough talk shops in this country.
We, as in the youth movement,
young people, well, at least the people involved in the Beyond Borders project don't think there are enough talk shops for young people. Actually, the idea comes from Sivaram's. Me reading Sivaram's autobiography, where he talks about the study circle being a very active political space in the past in Sri Lanka. So it's tried to revision that sort of spaces and recreate those spaces for young people. And we don't talk a lot. We want to shy away. There's a general attitude. It's not just
so
among
is it just
young
silence people. when these groups meet? Is it the case that a few people talk and more listen? What has been
the start has been, yes, where
right.
few people talk and mostly remain silent.
And it's not just like-minded, right, who've come into this?
No, not really.
But what has been your base understanding for acceptance into this group?
Acceptance,
or do you have one?
Yes, we do have one, yeah. where people do believe that a solution to the ethnic conflict can be forged only through a negotiated settlement. Though the parameters of negotiated settlement we don't specify. But we want people who are interested in a culture of dialogue, people who can dialogue. But in terms of participation in these youth circles, as to whether they actively participate, I don't necessarily believe that talking is the only way of participation. If you are there, if you want to listen to things and dialogue yourselves within yourselves, and if that is happening, and I do see that happening with some of the people who come to the study circle. So that's also an effective way. So it's also about group dialogue, it's also about individual dialogue, starting the dialogue within yourself as to whether you've thought about some of the issues that are being raised.
Now, at the risk of embarrassing you, you're just 23, and
that
you're
seems
not
old,
going.
Actually,
you're not. Sorry.
That seems old.
Well, yes and no. But the question I wanted to ask is that you're not going to be in whatever you define as the category of youth. I mean, it's impossible for you to be that. So how, when one does progress on and mature, and in terms of years, not necessarily in terms of wisdom, where do you see yourself 10 years down the line in terms of what, articulating still what you might be very passionate about?
Yeah, 10 years down the line, it's also being committed again to youth activism when young people talk about it, and knowing that, being part of the adult community, that you want to understand and include and also be appreciative of what is happening.
And the question I wanted to get at is, do you really feel, do you get the sense that you're fostering a community of youth who are receptive to the idea that they need to be committed to the idea of political change? So you might actually 10 years down the line have a corpus of individuals who might be more receptive to these ideas you're trying